Chapter 5: Crisis, Decision, and New Beginnings. Though the mills of God grind slowly, yet they grind exceedingly small. Friedrich von Logau. Each situation that threatens our security, our health, or our peace is a crisis. Despite attempts to evade or to eliminate these conditions from human experience, this is impossible. Even in the Christian life, it is necessary to face up to trouble. To evade crisis is to experience it. Remove serious problems from Christian experience, and you remove the cross from the ministry of our Lord, who also experienced crisis and felt the profound pain that we all feel as human beings. It is therefore essential to affirm a philosophy of life that includes the reality of suffering and pain, which frequently is the result of crisis. The important questions are: how can we face crisis? And what is our emotional reaction to the problems that we experience? Crisis presents itself in many forms. The crisis of loneliness can result in very serious consequences. Feeling oneself abandoned in the world is frequent in our society. The crisis of anxiety, especially chronic anxiety, is a problem for many. Obviously, there is a normal level of anxiety, which is inevitable. To live is to have anxiety. But when anxiety becomes a tyrant that tortures and torments us and escapes our control, then the crisis is serious. The anxiety problem has reached much serious proportions in the United States, such serious proportions that 67 million sleeping pills are sold each year. Undoubtedly, this is the age of anxiety, and as a result, it is also the age of tranquilizers. The crisis of rejection involves experiences during which human beings feel turned away by God, by other people, and even by themselves. These incidents may come about as a result of loving another person, and that person not loving us in return, producing the sensation of rejection. It was the French existential writer Jean-Paul Sartre who defined hell as a place where love is not reciprocated. The crisis of homesickness causes us to feel terribly impelled to return home. It is a profound and powerful impulse. E. Stanley Jones, late well-known world evangelist, said there is only one sickness, and that is homesickness. He was referring, of course, to the return of the soul to its spiritual home with God. The crisis of doubt risks being offensive only when it is directed against ideas and attitudes which are warmly cherished. Our fondest ideas are those from which we derive our sense of support. In life. When these are attacked, doubting ceases to be a game and becomes a battle. Ideas and beliefs have what José Ortega y Gasset, a 20th century Spanish philosopher, called an orthopedic character. They are always subject to fracture. It is the business of doubt to warn us before the load of life breaks them and leaves us in crisis. The crisis of emptiness is no stranger to many. How indebted we are to Viktor Frankl for pointing out so clearly the existence of an inner emptiness which he identified as an existential vacuum. He has helped us to understand that meaning must be found in whatever we do. Otherwise, there will emerge a sense of despair and futility. Frequently, we have ignored the importance of this issue and have spent considerable time dealing with the symptoms of this contemporary sickness: meaninglessness. Symptoms of emptiness may be manifested as anxiety, loneliness, boredom, fear. and in many other ways. Unless we get at the root cause of our problems, there is no way to achieve total fulfillment and the abundant life. All of us face the crisis of our own death, which is potentially present with us all the time. It is then that we begin to look at life from a different perspective and are able to differentiate between that which is trivial and that which is essential in life. Sometimes in a desert experience of crisis, we know what it is to be at a place of testing. A person is always better than before after a night in the desert. Suffering has a way of refining us and reshaping us anew. Then there is the element of decision. Every person, as a result of being, existing, and living, finds himself or herself constantly facing the task of making decisions. This experience occasionally is painful because decisions have repercussions that affect our lives both positively and negatively. Each decision has within it the sensation of crisis as well. It is because of this certainty that many persons prefer not to make any decisions. They keep themselves at the level of neutrality and allow their circumstances to make the decisions that are going to affect their lives. Inevitably, from a pragmatic perspective, not to decide is to decide. One of the most terrible tragedies is that of indecision. Indecision has been compared with a sort of a gradual suicide, something like death taking place in slow motion. What happens is that the indecisive persons waste their lives, and indecision robs them of strength and vitality. Of course, there are trivial decisions and major decisions. Trivial decisions occur over things that do not alter our destiny. It is possible that men and women worry too much over what to wear or may vacillate over what to eat when they go through a cafeteria line. Frankly, time is too valuable and scarce to waste on trivial decisions. On the other hand, it is the major decisions which determine our destiny. We must transcend the terrain of the trivial and concentrate on that which is essential. For instance, whether to believe and accept the love of God, or whether to change radically our lifestyle, or the choice of a vocation. The problem with indecision is that, meanwhile, circumstances and society often go ahead and make the decision without our involvement. Decisiveness is of crucial importance. If we do not respond to opportunities that come knocking at the door, they may never return. There is no place for a definite maybe philosophy. We are living only halfway when we ignore a decision that must be made. We have life, but we do not have it in abundance. We fail to live life in all its fullness. And perhaps sooner or later, we must ask the question that Shakespeare places on the lips of Hamlet when he says, "To be or not to be?" It is necessary to have courage in order to be, and the grace of God gives us the courage to be and the courage to live in spite of it all. In one of his most inspiring poems, renowned American poet Robert Frost talks about a fork in the road. Two roads diverged in a yellow road, and sorry I could not travel both. And be one traveler, long I stood. I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. The poem has to do with decisions, but also with the willingness to risk. It is always hard to pioneer into new ventures and to be open to new experiences. The only way to be creative in what we do is to be imaginative and initiate new possibilities first in our mind and then in the arena of our work. We find it so hard to make decisions. We are forever at the crossroads of life, but find it even harder to decide to take the road less traveled by. However, growth or maturity only occurs whenever we are willing to venture forth from the familiar and customary patterns and begin new trends. What about new beginnings? Perhaps there is no question more frequently raised than this one. How can I begin anew? Sometimes people ask a pastor or a counselor, help me to begin anew, to begin again. It is then that we can talk about the glory and the marvel of a new beginning. The grace of God enables us to shape anew the heart that has been broken, for God rescues us from the depths of the past and lifts us to the mountaintops of a new awakening. There are countless persons who have been broken by life, and Jesus came precisely to renew life, to shape anew our shattered hopes and our broken dreams. Jesus, during these 3 brief years, was able to accomplish more toward the regeneration of humankind than the research of philosophers and the discoveries of scientists have accomplished in all of history. In a very real sense, it could be affirmed that though he was born during the 1st century, he belonged to all the centuries. He was born a Jew, but belongs to all the races. He was born in Bethlehem, but his influence has been felt in all communities around the world. He did not come to alleviate the symptoms of our illness, but to cure us. He has power to make us free from the burden of the past, from the remorse of a defeat, and from the tragedy of failure. A beautiful Chinese proverb says that a long journey must begin with a single step. Today is the day to take that first step and to begin moving toward paths of glorious transformation and victory. The traditional way in which we have dealt with the issue of salvation, beginning again, has been to talk about being lost and then found. Obviously, there are persons who are lost, many of them as a result of precarious living exigencies. They live in crowded conditions. They don't have good jobs. Family life is disrupted, and some are even hungry and cold. They become easy prey for drugs, violence, promiscuous sex, and broken families. Evangelism is concerned with providing meaningful ways to find these persons and bring them back into the fold. They cannot save themselves, and so they need God's grace to enable them to begin again. Of course, it is also possible to be lost in church. We sometimes hear the complaint, I can't find God in church anymore. What a tragedy. The truth is that even people who are active can lose their vision and genuine relationship with God in the midst of all their activities. They may not feel lost or may not be willing to admit it. And yet people can be far away from God within, as well as outside the church. The joy of finding persons who have been lost is like the indescribable rejoicing of the shepherd who finds the stray sheep. Many people are in some kind of bondage and find themselves in tight, closed places. Often they are the victims instead of victors of their circumstances. Sometimes it is a matter of extreme self-condemnation and false guilt. Some are indeed guilty and know and feel that they are lost. Even then, God does not abandon them. God cares for the guilty as part of the flock and cares enough to seek and to save them and bring them back to the fold. Then it is that they can experience the wonder, the mystery, and the glory of a new beginning. It is essential that we be willing to accept the responsibility to bear our own burdens and to begin again. Think about these questions and observations. Crisis experiences come into every person's life at one time or another. Have you experienced, or are you experiencing, some kind of crisis at this point in your life? What are you doing about it? We are forever at the crossroads of life. Destiny is determined by the momentous decisions we are called to make. What is the most important decision that is facing you? All persons need to begin again and again and again. It is this experience of a new truth which must be constantly renewed. When was the last time that you were born again? Pray aloud. Oh God, yes, I have a crisis in my life, and there are important decisions that I need to make. Help me to be courageous and endure the trials, for now I want to begin again. Amen. A thought for reflection. Spirit of God, descend upon my heart. By Errol Marlott. Spirit of God, descend upon my heart. Wean it from earth. Through all its pulses move. Stoop to my weakness, mighty as thou art, and make me love thee as I ought to love. I ask no dream, no prophet ecstasies, no sudden rending of the veil of clay, no angel visitant, no opening skies, but take the dimness of my soul away. Hast thou not bid me love thee, God and King? All thine own, soul, heart, and strength and mind. I see thy cross, there teach my heart to cling. Oh, let me seek thee, and oh, let me find. Teach me to feel that thou art always nigh. Teach me the struggles of the soul to bear, to check the rising doubt, the rebel sigh. Teach me the patience of unanswered prayer. Teach me to love thee as thine angels love. One holy passion filling all my frame, the kindling of the heaven descended dove. My heart an altar, and thy love the flame.